Welcome to the debate. Today we are tackling one of the most pervasive, yet often invisible crises of the modern age, loneliness. And this isn't just about a private feeling of sadness. We are talking about a quantifiable public health emergency. The data is, well, it's shocking. Weak social connections are linked to a mortality risk comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. In England, 7% of adults report feeling lonely often or always. This is a societal failure, and the crisis is growing faster than our ability to address it structurally.
The scale is absolutely undeniable, you're right, and the severity demands immediate attention. But the thing is, traditional societal structures, community centers, neighborhoods, these so-called third places, have often failed to adapt to the realities of urbanization, increased mobility, and the dramatic rise of solo living. Where those systems fail, the market inevitably steps in. We are currently witnessing the rapid expansion of what is being termed the loneliness economy, a multi-billion-dollar market.
And that really is the crux of our debate today. Does this market, which is growing at about 14% annually, and is, let's be honest, driven by profit, does it offer a pragmatic, viable path toward alleviating widespread isolation, or does it fundamentally exacerbate alienation by monetizing and then ultimately replacing the very structures of genuine, disinterested social connection?
I maintain that the market is ethically responding to a staggering and unmet demand. It's a $4.6 billion market because the need is that critical. When 79% of young adults aged 18 to 24 report frequent loneliness, we just cannot wait for slow, monolithic structural fixes. Commerce provides necessary differentiation, accessibility, and immediate practical solutions.
And I hold that the true resolution of this crisis requires systemic, organization-level change and a revitalization of non-commercial community spaces. Market mechanisms, by their very nature, push the most valuable human interactions toward quantification and instrumental exchange, which compromises the intrinsic quality of the connection itself.
Then let's look closely at where this crisis manifests, starting with the structures we often rely upon most, our places of employment.
Precisely. Our source material makes it clear that loneliness is not just a private emotional experience. It's an organizational phenomenon. It's observable by coworkers and supervisors, and it severely impacts performance. The research on employee behavior shows that greater loneliness results in poorer task execution, team role function, and overall relational performance.
That's a compelling correlation. But how exactly does a subjective feeling translate into measurable performance decay?
So it basically works in two ways. Two key relational mechanisms that really erode an employee's commitment to the organization. First, there's what's called lowered affective commitment. Employees feel a reduced emotional attachment or sense of belonging to their workplace. They're simply less invested in the communal success.
Okay.
The second mechanism is perhaps more damaging to the social fabric. Increased surface acting. This is the exhausting performance of masking one's true feelings. A lonely employee feels compelled to put on a cheerful face in Zoom meetings or over-participate in optional social events or constantly reassure colleagues they are fine, all to avoid the deep stigma associated with admitting isolation.
The danger here, as I see it, is that the corporation becomes the site of this relational failure. The loneliness study confirms that this defensive strategy triggers a negative emotional spiral. Coworkers sense the inauthenticity, they pull back further, and the cycle of isolation just deepens. I appreciate the call for organizations to fix this, but if the corporate structure itself is often the source of alienation, the second place, then we have to look to pragmatic external solutions that offer relief.
But the philosophical issue runs deeper than just workplace failure. The digital commercial environment fundamentally alters our perception of relational value. We can look to Aristotle's classic division of friendship based on utility, pleasure, or the truly disinterested good. The market pushes virtually all connection toward what he called instrumental friendship, relationships valued for what they can provide, be it utility, pleasure, or even just visibility.
And the problem with that instrumentalism is what exactly?
It is measurable, it's quantifiable, and therefore it's replaceable. That conflicts directly with the unique, irreplaceable quality of disinterested friendship necessary for genuine human well-being. You cannot measure the intrinsic value of shared history or unconditional support. The moment commerce enters this space, it attempts to impose a metric, turning the relationship into a commodity.
I hear your concern about the long-term philosophical risk, but we have to address the immediate material reality that market solutions are reaching people who cannot access traditional structures. Loneliness is concentrated heavily among vulnerable demographics. For example, disabled adults report loneliness 4 times more often than non-disabled adults. Where is the unpretentious, conversation-focused third place that is accessible to someone with severe mobility issues or, rigid time constraints? The market provides necessary differentiation. I see 2 primary categories responding effectively. We have connection facilitators, which are low-stakes transactional bridges, think niche hobby groups, facilitated community cooking classes, or professional co-working spaces designed for intentional interaction. They facilitate the initial spark.
And the second category?
Parallel experience products. These are products and services designed to make necessary solitude less emotionally painful. Consider the rise of single-serve meals, individual travel packages, or even the design of small-format urban apartments. This isn't about replacing connection. It's about making the increasing reality of solo living, which, in cities like Stockholm, affects 60% of all households, less burdensome.
But making solitude comfortable risks making it passively acceptable. It decreases the necessary motivation to engage in the difficult work of forming genuine, disinterested connection. We risk rewarding withdrawal.
I would counter that people who utilize these products are often actively striving to improve their life satisfaction. The market provides the tools for these strategies to succeed. If someone uses an app to find a facilitated running group, a connection facilitator, they are engaging socially. If someone uses solo dining services to simply leave their house comfortably, a parallel product, they are taking a necessary step away from deep isolation. They are choosing engagement over retreat.
This brings us squarely to the ethics of commodification, particularly when we look at the high-risk segment of this economy, connection substitutes. This is where the instrumentalism becomes most explicit and, frankly, most worrying. We are seeing AI companion apps and highly sophisticated parasocial platforms offering simulated intimacy. These services, which involve paying $89 a month for AI text messages or $40 a week for video chats, they monetize emotional vulnerability. It's hard not to look at those numbers, $89 just for digital text correspondence, and feel the profound desperation being exploited.
That high-risk segment certainly demands scrutiny. I agree. But I challenge the notion that the entire sector is fundamentally unethical. We have to distinguish between monetization for dependency and commercialization for essential physical and emotional support, which can serve a therapeutic function without being professional psychological advice.
Can you give me an example of that distinction?
Absolutely. Consider professional services like pay-per-hour cuddlers, which can range from, say, $30 to $300 an hour, depending on location and training.
But that's just, you're literally buying and selling intimacy, no matter how you frame it.
I understand the instinct to view it through that purely transactional lens, but let's reframe the need. This service exists to fulfill a basic biological need for non-sexual touch. This contact releases oxytocin, which lowers the stress hormone cortisol. For specific populations, elderly widowers whose spouses provided their only touch, trauma survivors who require structured, safe human contact, or individuals whose traditional support networks have failed completely, this structured, fully clothed commercial model provides necessary physiological support. It is a pragmatic safety net for populations in acute need.
But the long-term philosophical cost is significant. By putting a price tag on affection, you inherently reinforce the instrumental value of human connection across the board. The message becomes, your emotional and biological needs are services that can be purchased, rather than intrinsic relational rewards.
But the alternative for large segments of the population is zero human connection and heightened physiological stress. We have to face the reality that isolation is not distributed equally. Adults living in the most deprived areas are significantly more likely to report high levels of loneliness. They cannot wait 5 years for urban planning to rebuild the village church. Commercial accessibility often provides the only immediate relief available in these complex, unequal environments.
We shouldn't confuse accessibility with the efficacy of building genuine community anchors. Let's look at the foundational importance of genuine third places. The sociologist Ray Oldenburg described these spaces, churches, public libraries, traditional coffee houses, as crucial anchors of community life. And they are crucial precisely because they are unpretentious, they have regulars, and they prioritize conversation over transactional logic.
I appreciate the idealism of revitalizing those historical models, but if 60% of people in Stockholm live alone right now, how does a 5-year urban planning project address their Friday night?
It addresses the long-term resilience of the community. These non-market or quasi-market spaces are foundational for civic engagement and democracy because they are not centered on consumption. The logic of a library, for instance, is inherently different from the logic of a high-end co-working space that charges a monthly membership.
Okay, that's a powerful point about structural necessity, but let me offer a different perspective on modern urban reality. Commercial enterprises are rapidly becoming the most effective connection facilitators because they adapt to mobility, density, and safety concerns. The solo dining trend is the perfect illustration of this.
How so?
Well, in cities like Tokyo, where safety is high, or Hong Kong, with excellent transportation, dedicated solo diner restaurants flourish. These businesses actively reduce the shame and awkwardness of being alone through design choices, communal seating, single-person booths, or counters overlooking the kitchen. The market identifies a pain point. Eating alone is stigmatized and provides an adaptable, comfortable, low-stakes environment.
But that very adaptation leads to what sociologists call the hollow effect. Think of the modern coffee shop. It offers free Wi-Fi to attract remote workers. The patrons are physically present. They occupy space together. But they are absorbed by their remote digital connections. They minimize spontaneous, organic interaction with the people immediately surrounding them. The commercial hub becomes a staging ground for remote work, not a true anchor for local conversation.
But the commercial intent doesn't dictate the usage, does it? The solo diner actively choosing a counter seat, or the remote worker choosing a public space over home isolation, is still taking a step toward reducing subjective loneliness. The market provides the venue, the individual choice determines the outcome. We cannot dismiss the pragmatic function of just getting people out of their homes.
I agree we can't dismiss the function, but the digital element remains problematic, and I would say inseparable from the loneliness economy. We have to detail the mechanism by which digital media contributes to deep-seated alienation. The shift to what you could call performative identity construction.
Explain that shift.
Social media requires constant public relations work to manage one's profile, curate one's images, and maintain one's network. This results in the bureaucratization of friendship, this exhausting, metrics-driven management of one's social circle. We are turning our friends into brand ambassadors or obstacles for our own personal success and visibility.
And the result of that is?
It reinforces instrumentalism at the deepest level. Friends are no longer valued simply as ends in themselves. Their value becomes quantified by their utility in boosting one's profile or facilitating access. This attempt to impose a quantifiable metric like likes, follower counts, engagement on something fundamentally unmeasurable like friendship is alienation by technological design.
I hear your frustration with the current state of digital platforms, but I'm not convinced that the market can't evolve to mitigate this. Ethical digital commerce offers a clear pathway forward, prioritizing community health over mere engagement time.
That requires an anti-capitalist ethos operating within a capitalist structure. That seems unlikely.
Not necessarily. Brands can choose to operate as true connection facilitators instead of substitutes. They can design features for serendipitous interaction, and, critically, they can measure success by real relationship formation and community growth, not just platform views or ad clicks. If a running shoe brand creates a robust, localized running club and sees people leaving their app to meet up in person,
They're using commercial means to build genuine social structures around a shared interest. That demonstrates commerce can ethically mitigate loneliness by building community.
That requires sustained altruism that history suggests a profit-driven structure is just not set up to support. The concern for me is that while market solutions are inevitable, relying on them risks normalizing and deepening alienation by prioritizing quantification and instrumental value. We risk becoming less anthropocentric, focused on human flourishing, and more capital-centric in defining human well-being, which is exactly the critique Marx leveled at commercial society.
I would argue that recognizing the immediate, differentiated needs of people, the need for safe physical touch, for a comfortable solo dining experience, for accessible, low-stakes entry points to new groups, is the most anthropocentric response available right now. The market's role is pragmatic, to ethically address immediate pain and provide bridges where traditional social structures have dissolved due to powerful trends like the rise of single-person households.
So the fundamental disagreement, then, really remains over the type of value we prioritize. I acknowledge the necessity of differentiated solutions, but by leaning into the measurable, transactional comfort that the market provides, we risk losing sight of the unique, unmeasurable quality of disinterested human connection, which is required for long-term societal health.
The challenge is one of timing and reality. We are navigating a world where objective solitude is increasing and loneliness is unevenly distributed across socioeconomic and demographic lines. The market offers necessary tools for survival and for striving for happiness in the immediate term. I think the listener must weigh whether accepting that immediate, pragmatic comfort justifies the long-term risk of transactionalizing human sociality.